Today we're talking all about food. Before we jump into the story today, I want to point out that I'm wearing my number one favorite bow tie. This bow tie is indeed on brand for the theme of the podcast today being about food and groceries primarily. If you know the name of the person who designed this bow tie, we'll leave their name in the comments below. I'm excited to see how many listeners recognize this bow tie. I digress. On my first internship away from home, I lived in Omaha, Nebraska. I had this little dorm room with a tiny kitchenette. The first time I ended up taking myself grocery shopping, all on my own, I recall walking into the store and being somewhat petrified with all the decisions that I had to make. It was a little overwhelming. And then something occurred to me. I could buy just about anything I wanted. The realization hit me extra hard once I hit the cereal aisle because I could see the Lucky Charms in the Reese's cereal and the Cocoa Puffs and be like, oh, those are the cereals that I would always say, hey, can we get that? And my mom would be, oh, only if we had a coupon and it's on sale and it's a special occasion, then we could get that. But now I didn't need that restriction. I could buy anything I wanted. I remember looking up and down the cereal aisle, wide-eyed, like nothing's going to stop me. I get to make this decision. This is great. It was like literally a kid in a candy store, even though I looked like, well, I probably still looked like a kid. But the thought of being able to buy anything that I wanted was exciting to me. And somehow, my not yet fully developed brain was able to take the realization and the excitement, put it aside, and find the cheapest box of cereal that I possibly could for breakfast the next morning. And that's how my relationship with grocery stores started as a young adult. Later, I was living in Salt Lake City. Now, I wanted to be getting in better shape. I had a friend of mine who was really pushing me to get on this paleo diet of sorts. She had this challenge that she sent me online, and it had a meal plan tied to it. It had a bunch of recipes that you make that first week, and along with each one of those recipes, the ingredients were divvied up into shopping lists for shopping trip number 1, shopping trip number 2, shopping trip number 3. It was broken down for a full, I think it was 60-day sort of challenge. And I remember thinking to myself, well, how hard could that be? They've already done all the hard work for me. They've made the recipes easy and accessible, and they've broken down everything I need for those recipes into shopping lists that are already packaged up and spread out throughout the upcoming weeks. How could I possibly mess this up? I took that shopping list to the grocery store and spent over $200 on myself for that first week on the diet challenge. It was way more than I had ever spent in one grocery trip for 1 week's worth of groceries. And a big problem with this particular diet challenge is most of the ingredients were fresh produce. Fresh produce with a very short shelf life, even in the fridge. So I ended up making the first recipe, and it made so much food. I had a bunch of leftovers. And then I made the second recipe a couple days later, and I had a bunch of leftovers. I still had 4 more recipes to get through for the week and had more than enough meals to get me through that week. I had definitely overpurchased groceries. I tried my best to get to everything. Eggplant was the last thing that I remember wanting to get to and being kind of excited for. I can't remember the exact recipe, but there was a cool eggplant recipe. I remember reaching into the fridge and picking up the eggplant, and it felt like this big, heavy, soggy, nasty, overripe, rotten water balloon. It was disgusting. There was no way I was going to be able to eat that. I had probably half of the fresh produce that I bought for that diet challenge go bad. And it woke me up to how if I'm going to eat healthier, I need to have a better plan on how to go about it. And I need to understand what my meal plan is actually going to look like. I couldn't depend on someone else to make the meal plan for me. I needed to engage rationally with my diet in a way that wasn't going to result in so much waste. I was a little bit more prudent as I went through the rest of that challenge and only bought food for the recipes I was planning to make that week, given the serving portions and how many servings it made, as opposed to just making the recipes that the plan had listed. I didn't end up needing to make near all the recipes to get to the end of the challenge. And the challenge worked. I ended up feeling healthier and losing some weight, but the problem with it was it cut out carbs entirely. And I found that for whatever my dietary needs were, I would end up very short on energy by the afternoon. If I was at work on this diet and I finished lunch and I got back to my desk, well, I'd be pretty drained, a little bit more nodding on and off than I would otherwise had I had at least a piece of toast alongside my lunch. And that leaves me with my final sentiment. Everybody's dietary needs are going to be different. And everybody's going to need to interface with food in a slightly different way that's very personal to them. Almost no two people are going to be pursuing the same dietary plan. And a good healthy diet for you is going to be one that's not going to be limited to a certain season of life to kind of jump you back on track, but one that can change your lifestyle, change your relationship with food in little ways for the long run for the better. And only you can figure out what those changes are going to be.